What comes to mind when you think of the date, April 20th? Several things can come to mind, and some things can be very random, and you don't have any idea what you're thinking of. I'm sure that you've had that experience where you hear something, and then you have this random image that comes into your head. It's random, and you don't get it, but it comes into your head. Does that mean anything? Maybe or maybe not. Here's what comes into my mind when I think of April 20th, that particular date. A plane comes into my mind. And if you've ever seen My Fair Lady is about a woman who had a Cockney accent, and her, R's weren't, very good. And so she goes to, some guy who tries to teach her speech of, how to properly, pronounce words. And one of the exercises that he has her repeat over and over and over again, because that's the whole thing. Because, in April 2021, before starting this YouTube channel, I noticed that my speech was inconsistent. Now, when I was a child, I had a speech impediment. When I would say work, it would sound like woke. I could not pronounce the R sound properly at the beginning of the words and at the end of the words. I eventually got better. I've gone through speech therapy. I practiced in order to speak how I'm speaking today. I was noticing at the time, it really hit me, the weekend of April 16th, 17th, and 18th, Friday, April 16th, the 17th of April, which was a Saturday, and the 18th, which was a Sunday. That frame of 3 days, while the moon was in Gemini, at that time we were really thinking about our communication and, speech, and, we can communicate our feelings. And so, Gemini sort of makes us aware of our mental thought patterns, what we're thinking about, because it is an air sign. It deals with communication. And it's ruled by Mercury. And in that particular year of 2021, all the Mercury retrogrades occurred in air signs only. Because sometimes Mercury retrogrades can happen in 2 different signs. In 2021, all the Mercury retrogrades were in one particular element, because that's how it goes. Mercury was retrograde in Aquarius, and then Gemini, and then Libra later, into the fall. At the beginning of the fall of that particular year. And that frame of time, the 16th, 17th, and 18th, I was noticing my speech because I was inconsistent. I would say the ends, I would pronounce, work, saying that, saying work and not, woke. And sometimes I wouldn't do that. And sometimes I would pronounce words, one way, the proper way, pronouncing the R sign, and other times the R sound, and other times I wouldn't pronounce that so well. The beginnings of words, I really started to notice pronouncing the beginning of words. The very first, like if a word would begin with R, then it didn't sound very good, because it didn't sound, like an R sound And if you would have heard, how I, was speaking at the time, you're going to be hearing a difference in my communication. Now, there's videos that are going to be coming out during this Mercury retrograde season, and those videos are archived videos of me, which I have scheduled on my YouTube channel. And those videos are going to come out. Now, some of them you may not be able to tell because I changed my voice and I'm acting, or I'm doing a skit. There's one video where you're going to be hearing it. I'm speaking in my normal voice. I'm making fruit salad. It's a fruit salad video, for instance. That video, it is going to be a video where you're going to see me showing you how to prepare a fruit salad recipe. Where I'm using citrus, oranges, strawberries, and pears, and I'm showing the steps, and I'm showing how to make a dressing. I think it's with honey, balsamic vinegar and olive oil, and I think, something else. I'm showing how to make that recipe, and you're going to hear my pronunciation, my speech, my R sounds are not going to be the same as they are now. And that's something that I want to just warn you about and let you know about. So if you hear a word that sounds, funny, or, how does that make sense? How does what you're saying make sense? Then my R sounds, were not as good as they are now. And I did not pronounce the R in, certain words. So, anyway, over this period of time, around about, now, the 16th, 17th, 18th of April, I read out loud books, reading out loud, trying to train my brain and my tongue to pronounce the R sounds at the beginning of words, because I couldn't handle inconsistencies when I speak. When I spoke, I wanted to speak and say something that sounded clear, without having to be conscious of it, without having to think or be worried about it. And I've learned to just let thoughts be there instead of pushing them and resisting them, away. A huge part of my channel is astrology related, and sometime I will be presenting a video about the progressed moon in astrology. I have a social media post I did about that. And, speaking of, getting into mental ruts, having these certain thoughts that we're attached to, that was different though, because I was having those thoughts that bothered me, but okay, well, that change is calling me to do something different. And I took action, and it was uncomfortable because it was something new. It was my brain, a huge part of me, calling me to move into the unknown, and that's what I did. I took action and I improved my speech. And so, the progressive moon, getting to the progressive moon, it moves, it stays. So you have your natal moon placement, but then every 2.5 years, a progressed moon changes sign. So you have the opportunity to go through every single moon sign and experience, and have the full experience of how it feels with the emotional characteristics and traits of those signs. And it's a cycle of 28 years. So, you return to the same progressed moon sign every 28 years. In the summer of 2019, in August 2019, I got myself into a rut, and I was depressed, and I was really conscious about walking. I was really conscious about how my hands felt, and, other thoughts, and then it just sort of went downhill, and then I became, really blue and, depressed. I want to say from the the 15th through about the 23rd of August of that year. That's when I noticed it, and I got several other thoughts. There's certain types of thoughts where you're thinking about parts of your body, and you're having certain things, but you can't do anything in the external environment to change those things. And other things are in your external environment that you're thinking about that you can actively control and you can actively change. And so, I've experienced, um, you know, anxieties with both ends, both, thoughts I can't do anything in the physical reality to change or control, and then things in the physical reality that I'm sitting on that I can't, that I'm stagnating on changing, and then, dealing with breaking toxic patterns when it comes to, checking things all the time and, redoing things all the time. Now, Mercury is going to go retrograde on April 21st, which is a time where we may find ourselves just redoing things. But that's very disempowering because it's exactly what I'm trying to break myself out of. And so I'm not going to, I'm trying to break certain bad habits. Like the, habit that I was breaking through the speech. And, it did take time, but, eventually I got, where I was. So anyway, going back to what I said earlier about this My Fair Lady movie, one of the exercises that she was repeating over and over again was, the rain in Spain, goes gently on the plane, or, falls, gently on the plane or something like that. But could it fall heavily on the plane? Because on the, before, because, I found this out for the first time that on the 20th of April, I've sort of put the pieces of information together. Okay, there'd be an eclipse, a solar eclipse in April. Then I found out that it was on the 20th, and so I was thinking, okay, well, that's the cusp between Aries and Taurus, so that could be either Aries and Taurus, and lo and behold, it's going to happen in Aries at 29 degrees of Aries. And then I became dogmatic and perplexed at the fact that here's an eclipse that is occurring in a sign that the North Node is not yet in Aries, and yet we have a solar eclipse in Aries, and I now understand that the moon is at 29 degrees of Aries. It's close enough to the North Node at 4 degrees of Taurus because I know it's moved backwards, and the North Node will enter Aries in July of this year. So that the eclipse coming up, the new moon solar eclipse, is going to be a North Node eclipse. And so it's not just happening on the 20th of April, it's also happening on the 19th of the month, depending upon where you live in the world. I have a video about that. I live on Central Time, so it's going to happen for me on April 19th. Eastern Standard Time is the next day on the 20th. It's very important that we acknowledge that it's happening both days for a couple of different reasons, because it's accurate. And because there's something about, that particular date, April 20th, that is, it's an intense date to me. It's a serious date. And it is, a date. And, we obviously know if you dig back through history of, the monster of a human being and, a dictator that was born on that particular day, who probably had his son at 29 degrees of Aries. And yes, I am referring to, Adolf Hitler. And to put the eclipse energies, happening at 29 degrees of Aries and the themes of that, and putting together, who this person was and how this person behaved, and the damage and destruction and the awful things this person did, and the downsides of, the dark sides of the energies of this new moon solar eclipse. If you study both things together, you can put them together and find those similarities. Because the 29th degree in astrology is very volatile and intense. And, so you're feeling high energy, you just want to start something now. Really pumped up, gung-ho, energetic. It's a sort of, we're wrapping things up. And, now we've come this far, and, now we really need to, start again. That's really that the energy of that 29 degree, new moon that we're going to be having. And it also leads to endings. So what could possibly be endings? What are you releasing at square to Pluto? And what are you going to be initiating at this time and around this time? And so, the rain falling on the plain could be a metaphor of maybe we are, because in astrology, I don't believe that we're a victim to the cycles. There's a certain way to look at it. And if you have a really negative, fear-based, pessimistic attitude, then I don't know, I would change that mindset if you're really studying and learning astrology. On the next day, Mercury goes retrograde, and there's a whole narrative about Mercury retrograde. And there has to be a separation and boundary between all the stuff that's being said about it, all the disempowering protocols about don't sign contracts, don't do this, don't do that, and a more empowering and productive and responsible and, positive, approach to looking at Mercury retrograde. It's an opportunity to consider things, to review things, to, to reevaluate, to be productive, to get things done. To see something again. You're moving forwards on a particular path. Say I'm moving forwards, and as I'm moving back, I'm reviewing, and then re-seeing that same path again. I'm having a second look at it. Mercury is going back over a certain path. Starting on the 21st. But talking about this particular day, it is kind of, very, there's an urgent element to the day. There's something kind of, a force to be reckoned with energy. Like this is, this is serious. This is, not messing around. But it could also be a type of personality that you could reject. Someone very, forced to be reckoned with. Powerful. Because there's a powerful, because that, new moon eclipse happening on that day is very powerful. And, even though, the whole myth of cusps where people born between signs can have a mix and a blend of energies of one sign and the other sign. I was watching a video saying that's not true, there's 0 degree and there's 29 degrees, and those are very different things. 0 degrees is the beginning of the zodiac signs, 29 degrees is the end of the zodiac signs. But in terms of that whole sun sign view, which is, in your view of astrology, you have the cusp of power. Aries, really initiating, wanting to take the lead, wanting to, domineer, wanting to be the pioneer. The boss, if you will, it's the cardinal energy, wanting to, take the reins. It says it's a really strong male, leadership energy, and it is about authenticity and empowerment. Taurus is a fixed sign. It's really strong. It's really willful. It holds something down. It holds a particular position. And it's very stubborn. But at the high level, it is commitment, and it is will, and it can be somebody very, rock solid and empower. And the fixed signs at best can inspire us to have those solid foundations. But at worst, we become rigid and stuck and inflexible. And there can be difficulty with change. And then Gemini comes in, open up a little bit, lighten up a little bit. Let's explore, let's be spontaneous, try something new. And it is the opening of our mind. We're sort of building from, Aries, and then Taurus, we're laying our, foundations. What do we need? Food. What are the resources we need to feel grounded, secure, productive? Let's connect with the earth. Let's live an embodied experience, and we just build till the end of the zodiac. So, in terms of, this particular year, as opposed to, other years, I remember the last time that the sun was at the anaretic degree of a Mars-ruled sign, which was Scorpio, was November 21st, and I was stressed out about an assignment that I had to complete, which I just found out about, and then I became stressed, frustrated, frantic, and I couldn't focus. It was hard to, swallow, and hard to accept and digest it. Oh, okay, I had this thing due, which involved higher order thinking questions. I had to analyze poems, and there were these complicated questions. And so that was, really stressful. And of course, at the time, Mars was retrograde in Gemini, squaring Neptune. There's a lot of, things astrologically going on at that time, and I didn't apply, self-care and, take a step back and calm down and take a breath, because that really is, where you can find powers, in your breath. And I really wish I would have, slowed down and took a breath and took my time and enjoyed the process. But of course, I was stressed because I was under pressure and did the deadline, and it was before Thanksgiving. So anyway, a year ago, from the 20th of April, so this is kind of, a personal story. I was doing, maybe there's a way to tie this in, but, this is random, but this is how it was. I did a live stream, the 20th of April last year of, Taurus season 2022, and you can check that out if you want to review, what happened from April 20th through May 20th of last year, which was Taurus season, when the sun is in Taurus. And we're going to be heading into Taurus season very soon. And on that day, I also did mock interviews. So I was, pretending to be interviewing, sort of having all these skills, all these, trying to practice answering, you know, or I think maybe I was asking the questions. Maybe I was asking the questions to, somebody who was, somebody working for this company. And so it wasn't a real interview. And that was when I was working last, spring and winter. So, that's what kind of went on. But anyway, the whole metaphor of the rain falling down and, on the plane is, a lot of, you know, intense energy coming at you that you can't control. And that's a negative view, of, astrology. Wonderful things to do at this time is to move energy, is to, get outside, take a walk, do something like, Tai Chi, yoga, you know, anything that is physical, anything that you can authentically express yourself, singing, or anything that is a spiritual practice that is moving energy, because Aries, particularly Aries moons, they need to move energy. They, there's an emotional security, and you feel nurtured when you move energy and pick up the energy and you express yourself. So this is, really dynamic, and this isn't a light and fluffy new moon energy. Even though it's quiet, it's certainly very loud and very dynamic energy, especially being at 29 degrees of Aries. And, you could wonder what is going to be happening on the world stage when it comes to Aries issues. And Jupiter's really close to the new moon. So it's expanding Aries qualities, issues around, gun violence, people in power, violence, rage, athletes, all those kinds of issues could come up around that time on, the mundane level. And I didn't really look at, mundane astrology. And there's also something to be said about the people born around the 20th of April. So, people born April, I want to say 18th, 19th, 20th, 21st and 22nd, right around there, Pluto is squaring their sun, and it may be out of sign because it's at 0 degrees of Aquarius. And on the new moon coming up, the sun and moon are both squaring Pluto, and it's very tight and very it's out of sign because Pluto's in Aquarius. But the geometry, the sacred geometry lines up, even though Aries and Aquarius do not square each other. They're at a certain distance where the sun and moon and Pluto come to a square. It's really tight. And for those born, because it's right at, 29 of Aries, 0 early degrees of Taurus, and, Aquarius, Pluto's at 0 degrees of Aquarius, and it's going to be going back to 29 degrees of Capricorn and hanging out at the very end degrees of Capricorn. And it's there for the majority of this year. More of this year, less next year. And so, I wonder what could be, going on, for those people in their own personal lives. And I'm not going to say, what's going on, because they have their own experiences and challenges that they experience at personal times, but it could suggests, maybe power struggles, and also the need to hold on to something that you need to release that. And there is a strong calling to release and destruct and transform the old to create a new. And a part of you might be holding on, but it needs to, let go. And, screws to Pluto. Pluto is going to bring the truth. You're going to be seeing the truth and transforming whether you want to or not, no matter, if it's uncomfortable, if it's new, if it's scary. Pluto is calling you to a, to a rebirth, and to find that empowerment in yourself. And it could be, Pluto is also the energy of crisis. Really significant events can happen when, they say, Pluto transits, planet, especially by square or opposition. It can be challenging, and it can bring about difficult, negative, stressful, chaotic, turbulent situations, potentially crisis, although, I don't want to say, this is how it's going to be. But either way, this is the time to, to find that power and to use your power wisely, and to not hold on to negative attachments that don't work for you anymore. And so, so we're going to be having, the day after, April 21st, and I am going to be taking a break for this Mercury retrograde, taking off, getting off, updating social media, because I really want an amount of time just to, reflect and just, sit and, read more, just sit and have it, more, simplicity, just to take a break from all those things, to get outside and spend more time in nature and take a break so that I can come back with a, better perspective and a new, beginning. And I'll be coming back to, social media. And this isn't a guarantee. It may change, but this is what I have planned. I may be coming back around the 14th, 15th of May. Then I'll continue doing my videos, and I'll talk about Jupiter because it'll move into Taurus. On May 16th. So that is, really what I want to talk to you about. Have a wonderful, eclipse, new moon eclipse. I wonder what's going to be a change. And, solar eclipses are a new moon, but they're an even bigger new beginning. And so this really is a new beginning with wisdom and evolution that we are being called to initiate at this time. And, hearing about the upcoming new moon, an eclipse happening, when I first heard that it was an eclipse, I went into being dogmatic and having my beliefs. No. As far as I know, eclipses do not occur in signs that the nodes are not transiting through, until I learned that that doesn't always happen. Sometimes eclipses occur in signs the nodes are not in at that time. And I believe it now, and I am in agreement with it, and I made a video about it, and I keep talking about it because I understand it now. And I really want to speak to not going into creating a certain reality that isn't true, about facing reality and being open and humble to understand things that you don't understand. You can have the idea that, oh, this is not going to happen. You can, lie to yourself and say, no, I don't believe this piece of information. I'm just going to stick to what I know. Eventually, you will face reality and you will understand. Okay, this is happening, and here's why. It's so important to face the truth to be in reality. And as someone who, makes videos on this stuff, and that's not all that I do. I don't box myself into only making videos about astrology. I want to keep it open-ended to make any, video that I feel inspired to make. But I find myself wanting to make astrology videos, so that's obviously more of, what I value now. And I was being, accurate at that information. We all hear things, and it touches the nerve, and then we want to go into denial about it and disagreement. We want to put up a wall, and we want to put up a fight about it. No, this is not happening. No, I don't believe this. But then as time goes on, that denial, becomes, more difficult to hold on to. And eventually, we let it go and we face the truth. One way or another, we face the truth. And maybe sometimes we are forced to face the truth. And it's better for us to face the truth and, and to understand. And I was born with my sun opposite my moon, sun in Aries, moon in Libra. So, on that full moon around April 5th and 6th this year. So the Aries part wants to, okay, I want to do my own thing, do what I want to do, be authentic. This is what I believe, this is what I want. But then Libra wants to understand, intellectually understand things, communicate, wants balance and harmony and justice. And so I don't really want to be a negatively selfish person and someone who is, out for, himself. And I don't want to, take away something from somebody else just for my own gain if it, hurts them. So, it's sort of I'm balancing, sort of balancing these two parts. And so astrologically, this is sort of when I'm balancing, my whole kind of life, I guess you could say, having this, and I'm just saying that from an astrological lens. The North Node's still in Taurus. It's been there since January 18th. Since then, one way or another, we've done shadow work. We've released what is ultimately, we're really shining a light on a certain wound, and we're examining that wound, and we're releasing Scorpio so that it can move into love, peace, contentment, presence, stability, all those Taurus qualities. And it is difficult to also be patient and, want to, stay the course and be willing to know that it's not going to happen overnight. Change and healing and releasing those patterns and becoming someone new. Sometimes you can say to yourself, oh, I just want to become someone new. I just want to begin again. And that's what the new moon eclipse can feel like. It's the thrust of momentum. Oh, I want to begin again. But then Mercury goes retrograde in Taurus. Oh no. Let's go back over things. And that's the sort of North Node in Taurus as we're learning how to not rush the process, how to take one step at a time. And it is difficult because Scorpio is an intense sign that wants something done now. It wants to go to extremes. It wants to go all in. It wants to just push forward until the end. And, pushing forward, astrologically may be more, it may feel, more right to do that once we get into July and the North Node shifts into Aries. But Taurus doesn't want to push and rush. It wants to go slow. So when we can be present and be willing to go through that slow and steady process of, moving one step at a time and, enjoying the moment and being willing to, just be, here and let go of that Scorpio need for, intensity and power and, drama, and all of that. So that's sort of, what we're working with is we're understanding how to be true to ourselves in terms of what we value and how to move toward that. We're still doing that work until July when the nodes change signs. And the lunar eclipse on May 5th is going to look at the South Node. It's the South Node eclipse. And we can see what we finally need to release, finally need to let go of. Any kind of, power deals with Scorpio, deals with power structures. It could be, maybe, issues around power or intense emotions that we may need to look at and examine. And we can review those North Node lessons when Mercury goes retrograde in Taurus. And Mercury was both retrograde, in Taurus in 2022 and 2023. It's retrograde in Taurus, that's one thing, in the sign the North Node's in. Both years, because, the years that the North Node is in Taurus is both 2022 and 2023. And at the times of the nodes of the moon back in January 2022 entered Scorpio and Taurus, Mercury and Venus were both retrograde. The nodes change signs around, Venus retrograde seasons. I've noticed that. And, maybe that, can either happen while Venus is in retrograde, before Venus goes retrograde, or after it goes retrograde. But it can be around that time that, is during the Venus retrograde season. And so, we're going to be reviewing, reevaluating, reflecting on the things that we need to look at during Mercury retrograde in Taurus. And I hope that serves you very well. And thank you for tuning in. I sort of went in many different directions at once on this video. But I hope that you enjoyed it. Bye for now.